Okay, everybody smile, you're on. Okay, I shall begin. First of all, welcome to the hi there, Josh.
Hi,
Uh,
how are you?
I get my I get my monthly exercise when you come on.
That's right. On your jogging shoes.
Oh yeah, oh that's good. That's good. Okay. Those of you who've got not got your cameras on, please put them on, unless you've got a really, really good excuse, like it's a bad hair day or something like that. Murad and Ak, etc. And Satish, cameras, thank you. Okay. Um, so I welcome I welcome the old crowd. I don't mean old, but the people have been from the very beginning. We've been going for over 5 years, by the way. And there are people here. Hi Kasumi, good to see you, literally. And a- and people have been with us from the very, very beginning, believe it or not. And a lot of people come come every month, and it's wonderful to see you. And I especially welcome people who've never been here before. You've come to a controversial one this time. Not that they never are not, but this one we'll see. Anyway, in a way, this is connected to last month's, which was discussion about interpretation and. That everything is interpretation, I said, and it was individual subjective interpretation. The reason I'm saying it's like a continuation, but it isn't, is because I noticed from the chat, people do chat, which I only see afterwards, and people spoke a lot uh, uh, about uh, about objectivity and objective truth and all that, which we didn't really talk about, but there was a connection. So I decided to um, to take the bull by its horns and discuss the connection between existence and knowledge. A very light topic, very easy, as you'll see. Anyway, um, the classic distinction between ontology, ontology is what there is, i.e., existence, and epistemology, which I saw as what we know about what there is. And I object to that strenuously. The what ontology is, because I say it is what we know. What we know is what there is, right? That is existence from knowledge. Whereas they said we know about what there is, which assumes that there is. And I'm saying no. I'm saying no. It's the other way around. It's I said ontology. I say that ontology is knowledge from existence, and epistemology is existence from knowledge. There's a big difference, folks. Okay, existence is an epistemological construct. If we didn't know, here's a hard one to start with. If we didn't know that we exist, we wouldn't exist. Before you all scream at me, this has nothing to do with other people knowing that we exist. My point is our own existence as far as we're concerned. I'm calling this inside out epistemology, putting it more fancy. It is actually epistemological anti-realism, but don't worry about that. It shatters traditional notions of knowledge and certainty. The individual observer and knowledge cannot be separated. That's my point. Epistemology, as far as I'm concerned, is individualistic, from inside outwards, not from outside in. This issue comes up again and again, is that the link between knowledge and the observer. So a cardinal question is, do things that were discovered exist before they were discovered? Now, this seemingly controversial question often leads to the knee-jerk reaction of, yes, of course they do. As somebody said on somewhere on Facebook, yes, they existed but not for the discoverer, which is a common reaction. But this just exposes the intimate relationship between knowledge and the individual, the knower, the observer. To claim, like I do, that they didn't previously exist seems on the surface to be ridiculous. Rather, a common view is that discoveries are about uncovering what was already there, rather than creating something new. For example, the laws of physics are said to have existed before humans discovered and formulated them. How about numbers, for example? Did numbers exist before they were invented, discovered by humans, as Plato posited? But let's look at the question again. What is usually claimed is that once we discover something, it merely proves that it existed beforehand. I must then ask, in which way does something exist when we don't have the information to have knowledge of it? In which way and where and for whom did the laws of physics exist before anyone knew about them? It surely is merely an assumption that what we discover proves that it existed before we discovered it. For instance, when a new species of animal is discovered, it is assumed that the species had existed in the physical world. But for whom did it exist? For God? Where would it be known? There is no view from nowhere, surely. The question is about whether the species existed regardless of human awareness of it. Surely, though, the reason the new species was new was that it was discovered. It was new because it was discovered. It follows then that if it hadn't been discovered, it would not have existed. Similarly, distant galaxies, ancient fossils, and mathematical principles were new to those who discovered them. We assume that they did, but our assumption is based on what we know from when they were known about. It is not that our perception shapes our reality. Our perception is our reality. Others' reception is their reality. The realities may be the same, may seem the same, or may just be similar, but in no way are any of them reality, the reality. When explorers discovered new lands, those lands were already inhabited by indigenous peoples. But until those lands were known about by the explorers, they did not exist for them, which is why there were new lands, even though they obviously existed for those who lived there. An example would be an island you didn't know about until you read about it. If you insist that the island existed even when you didn't know of its existence at the time, you are infected with a case of retrospective foreknowledge, claiming to have known something before knowing it. Now, according to my epistemological anti-realism, let's talk about the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Before you heard about or imagined the Eiffel Tower, it had no existence. Can please somebody stop talking?
I'm trying to.
Hello?
It's David Lloyd.
David Lloyd. Okay, thank you. So, before you heard about or imagined the Eiffel Tower, it had no existence for you. The moment it's described to you, even vaguely, it enters your knowledge world and thus exists for you. That means someone else knows is irrelevant until their knowledge is communicated to you. At the moment of communication, their knowledge becomes your knowing. So the Eiffel Tower now exists in your epistemic domain. And why is this different from anthropic anti-realism? What is anthropic anti-realism? The Eiffel Tower exists because some humans know it, whether or not you do. My view is different. The Eiffel Tower exists for me, each of us individually, only once I, each of us, know it. Even if that knowledge comes secondhand, until then, it does not exist for me in any sense. I just want to compare that with pure realism, that objects exist independently. Anthropic anti-realism is objects depend on humanity's conceptual schemes. My epistemological anti-realism is that objects exist only in individual knowledge. The insistence that things existed before they were known about is widespread and held dearly. Yuval Harari makes a distinction between objective reality and subjective reality, where the former consists of things that exist whether we are aware of them or not. His example is objective reality's existence of an asteroid hurtling towards the Earth, even if it's not known about. Now, while seemingly reasonable, it isn't. In which way does the asteroid exist? For whom would it be objective in any sense before it was known about? Surely the asteroid's existence can only be known about in retrospect. To be aware of something before one is aware of it is, to put it mildly, rather strange. There is nothing objective about such pre-knowledge. Less strange is Harari's subjective knowledge, which exists as purely and personal, such as pain, love, pleasure, etc. This, he claims, are in here as opposed to the out there objective reality. On a deeper level, by the way, it could be thought of as the opposite, where everyone knows what is meant by personal feelings, while no one knows what an unknown thing is. Existence requires awareness, even when unearthing ancient ruins, fossils, or artifacts, which presumably reveal aspects of the past. They could then justify the past having existed, but they don't. What they do is bring out possible aspects of the past. There is no real objective past, but only a remembered past, sometimes an invented past, influenced by later events. This brings us naturally to dinosaurs, obviously. If so far we have been considering discoveries that were supposedly in existence before they were discovered, where do dinosaurs come into the picture? Unlike unearthed ruins from human history, dinosaurs were around nearly 65 million years before humans appeared. The notion that dinosaurs existed before they were discovered needs to be thought about differently. First of all, we need to ask whether dinosaurs existed even in imagination before February the 20th, 1824, which is when the very Reverend William Buckland became the first person to describe a dinosaur. It was a day that dinosaurs were discovered and the day that history was changed, since before then, the huge bones that had been found were attributed to large versions of known animals. Dinosaurs, though, were different, having existed before humans did. The discovery of dinosaurs are now based on conjectured evidence in a new science, paleontology, on animals that had been extinct and therefore not based on our past or on a remembered past. That being said, the line between discovery and invention is somewhat blurred, with memory now reliant on experts' memory or what other expert had established of what had never been part of human history. None of these discoveries can be definitely accepted as objective or true, since they are constantly being amended as new evidence is brought out, with dinosaurs becoming so very different from the way they had been imagined previously. With fossils being reinterpreted through new techniques, many of us have trouble recognizing even our childhood favorites and those depicted in movie. Instead of the cold-blooded, slow-witted lizards we remember being told about, scientists now think that many dinosaurs were warm-blooded, some even with feathers, colors, etc. If dinosaurs are the link between the past and our pre-past, we must wonder whether the traditional distinction between discovery and invention is valid at all. After all, nothing is invented from nothing. Every invention, every discovery is based upon knowledge linked to previous knowledge. Existence is knowledge dependent rather than miraculously in place, waiting to be discovered or invented. Now, let's be clear about what is being claimed. That dinosaurs existed during the time when the minds that would have known about them hadn't yet appeared. That would be a ridiculous claim. The point is simply that at the time, there was no knowledge of anything. There were no people. There was no knowledge. To put it bluntly, there wasn't anything to be known about. Knowing now about dinosaurs does not mean that they were known about when there was no knowledge about them. That would be a ridiculous claim. Knowledge is then limited. We cannot know what we don't know exists. We know only what we know, so that we always know all there is to know at the time. Karl Popper made that point when he stated that our knowledge can only be finite, while our ignorance must necessarily be infinite. Okay, now ask a few questions. Don't need answers. When does a particle exist? A subatomic particle? When it is known about. It doesn't exist before then, does it? Do memories exist? Do false memories exist? Do forgotten memories exist? How about history? Does it exist? In which way? Does the road not taken exist? We did a whole Zoom on the road not taken about a year ago, but if those of you who remember. Does a road that could have been taken exist? Once you're on the road you took, there isn't any road you didn't take, and hence there's no other road you could have taken. Does nothing exist? I'm talking about a nothing which is the absence of everything, including ourselves. How could that possibly exist if we don't exist? To ask the question. What I'm saying basically is it's not a matter of ontology, but of epistemology. It always is. So, by the way, how was the speed of light measured? It was only measured when it was reflected back. It couldn't be measured going out. Reflected when we knew about it, when it was known. I'm going to give a few words on Schrodinger's cat, which most of you know about, but just to link it to what I'm saying. The idea was for the cat to be placed in a sealed box in which there was a vial of a poison, a Geiger counter, radioactive material, and a hammer. The radioactive material had a 50 chance of being detected over the course of an hour. If the Geiger counter detected radiation, the hammer would smash the poison, killing the cat. Until the box was opened, it was impossible to predict if the cat was alive or dead. And so it was posited as existing in superposition, i.e. as dead and alive simultaneously. In the traditional interpretation, it is the observer, once the box is open, who causes the collapse of the wave function and so determined the cat's fate. Okay, of course, as you must probably realize, I don't go with that at all. Before opening the box, by the way, the observer lacks knowledge of the cat's state because it exists as a temporarily unresolved possibility. But I say that it is simply a matter of not yet knowing the future. The cat will be known to be alive or dead when the box is opened. Observation synchronizes the observer's knowledge with the cat's temporal reality. This avoids the ontological issue of whether the cat is really alive or dead before observation and shifts the focus to the temporal process of gaining knowledge. But why is this a question at all? I've never understood why this is a question. I'm sure that the scientists do understand why, but I've never been convinced. Surely a more relevant question is whether the cat is alive or dead in the box before it is opened. It could have been alive and it could have been dead. Since we cannot possibly know which until the box is opened, the notion that the cat was both alive and dead at the same time is far-fetched and untestable, obviously. At any time the box was opened, it doesn't matter how many times we would have seen the state of the cat. It would have been a safe bet to say that we, the observers, would never have seen the cat simultaneously alive and dead. That goes only partly for the participant, the cat, who would never have felt both dead and alive, nor would it have felt dead or alive. It would be aware of only one state, that of being alive. The issue here, though, is about the observer. This is obvious, but isn't everything indeterminate for us until we know about them? We knew the cat existed before the box was opened, and it existed as alive or dead when the box was opened. Whether the cat turns out to be alive or dead was determined according to our observed knowledge. The thought experiment is an epistemological issue as much as one of science, perhaps more so. So, as I said, we cannot imagine not imagining. In other words, we can only imagine what we have already imagined. So can something happen that we can't imagine? The answer would have to be no, since we wouldn't know that it was happening. Basically, for us, there wouldn't be an it that was supposedly happening. And what does happening even mean if nothing is happening for us? This, of course, brings us to the enigma of the tree in the forest raised by George Berkeley, who asked if a tree fell in the forest and no one heard it, did the tree make a sound? I don't think this is a problem at all. In this particular case, the answer is that no, it didn't make a sound, since it has potential for sound, but it will have sound only when sound waves hit human or animal eardrums. Sound waves, vibrating molecules, don't make sound without the presence of human or animal ears. They have the capacity to hear. Similarly, a bar of chocolate sitting on a shelf has no taste or flavor until it impinges on human or animal taste buds. Now, another more subtle way of posing the question, which I mentioned a few times here over the years, is if a tree falls in the forest and we don't know about it, did a tree fall? All in all, though, it's more of a trick question, since it is ostensibly about the absence of knowledge. However, once we mention that a tree might have fallen, if a tree falls, we now have that possibility in our minds and there have knowledge of that possibility. So if a tree falls, we already know that there is a tree that might have fallen. The if does not merely posit a condition, it creates the object in one's mind. So that if the question is a twisted non-question, so when if plants in the mind the possible existence of a tree, there is no empty forest to be asked about. It's a ridiculous thing. The moment an if introduces an object, the object exists in the knower's world, regardless of the outcome of the if. The question in its essence again is, can things happen that we can't imagine happening? To which the answer would have to be no. If we can't imagine something, how would we know there is, or even maybe something? Knowledge must be based on what is knowable, and what is knowable must have a knower. I would have gone into Plato's cave, but I might not have come out again. And anyway, you all know it and you know what I would say about it, I think. So I'm going to miss that bit. So I'm coming up to the last few words, and just one word about a theory of everything that scientists are looking for. A theory of everything is about the knowledge of everything. Scientists should continue expanding our knowledge of how the universe works, but need to be aware that knowledge of everything, i.e. reality, is impossible. We cannot know what we can't know. No individual can know everything, and not everyone together can know. Knowledge has no knowable end. It is always an approximation, since the movement is to know more and more about less and less that together contribute to ever more knowledge as a whole. So that while there is a continual movement towards increased knowledge, approximation increases rather than decreases. So what I call inside-out epistemology allows us, each of us, the freedom to be existentially flexible, while recognizing it to be historically contingent, subject to revision, and necessarily provisional. This countermands claims for the existence of absolute universal truth and objective reality. This allows for continuous exploration and reinvention. The fact is that we, each of us, already know only what we know is in fact actually provisional fact. I am, as you may have realized, a subjective epistemologist. But I'm not merely a subjective epistemologist, but a reflexive epistemological anti-realist. I treat existence as coming into being through knowing, but I also recognize that each knower recognizes others as doing the same. This creates a web of subjective objectivity. People with personal realities aware of their own perspectival nature. I have to finish with Einstein, of course. According to Einstein, the world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. To which I would put it very, very humbly, the world as we have created it is an expression of our knowledge. It cannot be changed without changing what we know. That's me for this evening. You can all have a go at me now. And that might have been a bit controversial, but I don't think so. I think it's very simple, actually. What we know, we know. Okay. Right. Okay. People are really going to go for me. Wow. Okay. Alan, you're new and welcome. Have a go.
How are you?
I'm fine.
So I think there's a fundamental problem with saying that things come into being through our experience, because we're looking at screens right now and the photons are coming in at 289,000 miles, whatever. It takes some amount of time for that to happen. The sound waves that we're hearing take some amount of time. So we actually exist in the past. Our existence, everything we experience has already happened. And therefore it was already there for us to experience it. And what would happen if these guys in another another galaxy, or even right here, I create a reality that is in contradiction to another person's reality? How's it resolved?
It's not. I actually mentioned that we all have different realities. That's a
I know that, but it was
point.
fundamentally different. It was fundamentally different in the construct. So they're not compatible. The two interpretations or the two creations are not compatible. Which one is correct?
There's no correct. So my point of what I've been saying, there's no correct.
I can jump in the air and I go to the moon in my reality.
That's fair enough.
And it happens.
That's
but
okay.
then your reality or someone else's reality, it can't happen.
Okay.
So I mean, which one's true? The one where I experience and it happens and I'm on the moon and then I jump back down at the end of the day?
But I did say,
or the other one that can't happen.
There is no or. And there's no truth. That's the point of what I've been saying. There is no truth because we've all got a different truth.
So am I on the moon?
I don't know. Are you on the moon?
If I can jump up there and I say that I experienced that, I must be, right?
I suppose if you think you are, that's fine as far as I'm concerned. That's not the point, though, is it? The point is that if each of us have individual stuff coming in and individual different knowledge of different things, then that is the point I'm making. That each of us is in a different place, and it doesn't matter. I accept the fact that other people have objective ideas as far as they're concerned. I accept that. Everybody's children are the best, the wisest, the most beautiful. I accept the fact that that's subjective fact for them. I also know that it's subjective because my children are the ones that are the best. But that's fine. No problem. It's how we get along, basically. I think one of the reasons anyway.
And so if I can, let me pursue it. If I can be on the moon and walking around and then coming back here, how would that be possible in in a reality where someone else says it's not possible, and the astronauts that go there say it's not possible. But my experience tells me it is.
Well, it's not your experience, is it? It's your imagination, which I accept.
No. Yeah, there's the contention. It's my experience. I mean, this is a thought exercise, like the cat in the box, right? The cat in the box was not meant to be a literal interpretation. It was a thought exercise. That's the thing, right? But so we're doing a thought exercise where I can go to the moon because that's what I've created. I mean, do I need to create the laws that permit that as well? Or do I just need to believe it?
I don't care what you believe. It doesn't matter to me. I'm making a philosophical or metaphysical point. So if you imagine that you're on the moon, that's fine. I'm sure if you have mushrooms, you would definitely. It's okay. I don't mind.
No. I mean, I'm making a valid point. I mean, you're not accepting it.
Well, of course I'm not accepting it. I don't accept anything.
Because it's not your reality? Because it's not your reality.
It's not my.
Yes, that's all you're saying, is because it's not your reality. So you're proposing solipsism. So what you're proposing is solipsism.
I knew somebody would say that. That's why I ended with what I ended with. That
I mean that's what it sounds like.
I know it sounds like it, but I put it right at the end because I knew somebody would bring that up. I mentioned that I accept that there are other minds in the world. I accept it. So it's not. That's why I mentioned it. Anyway, thank you very much. You can come back for more soon. I've got to keep people in a reasonable time. Okay. Thank you very much, Alan. Very interesting. Thank you. You can come back for, right. Josh, you stopped.
No, that's just your subjective experience of my stopping.
I know I'm going to get slats thrown at me all evening. I know it. I know it. I knew this was going to be a difficult one. I knew it.
Okay, okay. I looked up. I used a couple of AIs to look up reflexive epistemological anti-realism, and one of them gave me people who I don't think you would side with, the later Wittgenstein and Foucault and social constructionists. But another one mentioned another mentioned Michael Williams. I'm wondering. So just preliminarily, I'm wondering if there are people. You mentioned Popper, but whether there's anybody in particular you have in mind that sort of also puts forward a very similar notion, or is this more something that's original to you? But then I wanted to say, you've said in the past that the present, we only know the present by in relation to the past and the future, but so we never really know. The now is sort of never something that we can nail down. But then, so if we depend on the past to know the present, and then you say, well, the past is a reconstruction. The past is a reconstruction. Then,
Josh.
Yes,
Josh. If you're going to quote me, you've got to quote me correctly.
Okay.
Because I never said any of that.
Okay.
I said there's no present. I didn't say that we rely on the past. It's a different story.
Okay. There's no present. Okay, but you said today that the past, when we rely on the past, we're often relying on a reconstruction. So rather than something like a veridical past. And so my first question concerns the consequences or the pragmatic implications of your view. So to say that the Eiffel Tower doesn't have any existence, or more importantly, something from the past like dinosaurs don't have any existence until a knower can know them. So in terms of the pragmatic consequences of it, we have to go and begin with the question of what are the uses and the value of laying out any kind of a history of anything. And we can start with a history which then goes back before. It can start from live, when human beings were there to record and document what they observe, and then you can push it back to well before the existence of human beings. Or it seems to me you don't have to do that, because I think the issue has to do with even the immediate past. I think the issue arises. It seems to me it can't simply arise at a point before there were any human beings to document things, because if the past is a reconstruction, even what has gone on, even what you said earlier in this meetup, in a sense, should be in some sense put into the same category as dinosaurs. That we can't say that past that we're recalling and relying on in order to go forward from it has any existence. But from a pragmatic point of view, we make use of it. And so clearly, even if you don't want to use the word exist, when you look at how sciences function and what makes them function, they function on the basis of reliably being able to anticipate future events based on the past. And even if we have to take out the notion of existence there, the question, we still have a certain kind of a continuity and an anticipatable model that we can rely on. So if you ask the question, what allows an airplane to stay up in the air, in spite of the fact that the people who are all coming together to build the model on the basis of the aerodynamic model on the basis of which it can fly, all have their own perspectives, and in some sense maybe live in different worlds or whatever. Obviously, we all allow that the plane can still stay up in the air, or we trust that it will stay up in the air.
A lot of them don't. Josh, can I stop you for a second, because you said some really good stuff, and I will forget the good stuff that you said, which will be problematic, because then you'll come on to stuff that I don't agree with. So hang on for a second. Very, very, very legitimate points you made. Very legitimate. The point is, though, that science in the past has often been wrong, but has been more wrong than not being wrong if you go back. But that's a small part. If things are wrong, just wrong or not, whatever you want. And you're talking about practical usage of my point. Now, if I would only talk about the practical usage, I probably would not have these meetings, because it sometimes happens that we get to positions that are very, very, very difficult to uphold in real life. So when we talk about being on the moon, which we can't be, right? We do it because we're discussing a point. This is what Alan did, which is fine. The point is, sometimes we reach some really difficult points where things are not grounded, where there are huge problems. Now, regarding continuity, that doesn't mean very much, because a lot of the stuff continues from absolute rubbish. And I really don't know what I need to do with that, because if you talk about the past, there is no the past. The past is our memory, and our memories are different. And I guarantee two people go to a party together, and I guarantee that a week later they will both say that something happened, and one will say that didn't happen, the other will say it did happen. There's no the past. There can't be. There cannot be. If anything of what I said was vaguely okay, then there can't possibly be the past. There can't be. It's impossible. And what the hell do we know about dinosaurs? Really, honestly. I mean, seriously. I mean, did dinosaurs exist? They only existed when we found knowledge about these big bones. That's when dinosaurs started to exist. They didn't exist when there was nobody around. These are very difficult points, and you're right to make them. As some of the points I make to myself are very, very difficult. I'm not saying that this is a rose garden. I've never promised you a rose garden here, by the way, and you've never actually had one. So no, but you're very, very good questions, Josh. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that sometimes life is difficult. When you get down to metaphysics, it's very, very difficult. Very difficult. I agree with you. can you, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Can you come back again later? Unless you've got something really.
Yeah. Let me try, compress it really briefly. There are two possibilities here in talking about, or three possibilities in talking about, did dinosaurs exist? You can say the position that you're arguing against. Yes, they absolutely existed before human beings. Second position could be your position, which is that the knowledge of them doesn't exist until a human knower actually, has that experience of it. And that's an epistemological argument. The third possibility is that it doesn't, because knowledge is not observation, it's interaction. And we interact with the world based on our purposes in terms of what we're doing with it. And that's why our knowledge changes, because our knowledge isn't passive observation. It's actually doing things with the world, and we're a part of it. And because what we're doing changes over time and how we do it, that's why the knowledge changes. If you take that position, then the question isn't, the answer to that question, did dinosaurs exist? Isn't no, they didn't. It's an incoherent question, because to ask whether something exists is also implicitly to ask how it exists, how its existence relates to what you're doing with it and what your needs and goals are with it, because that's built into the meaning of what it means for it to exist. So that's already an interrelational notion, which I think goes beyond epistemology, and that also solves the issue of these breaks in continuity and in anticipatability. Is that even when we encountered an absolute break in terms of our ability to understand someone else, there's still an underlying basis of connection. We know they're human beings. There's always something. There's some world that we have in common in a pragmatic kind of a way. So there's never a complete break. It's a matter of, it's relatively speaking, that yes, that's true of precise knowledge as well as it is of the most difficult situations of incompatibility and incommensurability. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The only point about dinosaurs I have to make is I did not say that dinosaurs do not exist. I said that dinosaurs did not exist at the time when there were no humans. That would be ridiculous to say they existed then. That's my point. That is the point. But thank you very much, Josh. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
Kerry, do you mind if I let somebody who hasn't been here before? Is that all right with you? Where are you, Murad? Yeah, you're here for the first time. I give you the Kerry very, very kindly let you come in. So if you want, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? This is a new microphone, so.
Yeah, I think you need to move back a bit.
Oh, it's too loud?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, thank you for letting me speak. I think so by fully focusing on existence and an epistemological component or piece of the epistemological puzzle, it would make your statements will make perfect sense. It's not particularly controversial. I think that does not deny that separate from epistemology, in terms of the physical reality, things can have an existence unrelated to our knowledge, unrelated to how we recognize them, formulate them, and process them, and make decisions based on that knowledge. So in other words, I don't see your argument really is inconsistent with somebody asserting that dinosaur existed, not in epistemological manner, but just that as a physical phenomena that actually occurred at some point. There's no knower about it at the time because there was no humans. So that's, I agree with, straightforward. But it is useful to stipulate that such a phenomena existed. And sort of that, I think that sort of leads a little bit to some of the points that Josh was trying to make, I believe. Because that does explain that when knowers start appearing and when they start perceiving the existence of potentially something that like dinosaurs, and they start making inferences about it, etc., then that would explain why these knowers will start making consistent observations about these things. And when the entire logical structural formulation will become coherent and consistent and essentially in many other ways promote effective and useful decision making and work, right? So, in other words, the by monopolizing the word existence to only and exclusively mean epistemological existence in the mind of a knower, you're ignoring its usefulness to describe things beyond epistemology that you can still imagine happening outside of a knower sphere, that if you stipulate that and you're able to accept that, will lead you to allow a degree of objectivity, consistency, predictability, coherence, etc., in the population of the knowers emerging this. So in other words, why not allow for non-epistemological notion of existence independent of knowers that will be highly useful in explaining theories about the world that we build epistemologically?
Okay, thank you. I just I don't understand, and that's my whole point, how anything can exist without anybody knowing about it. I just don't know how that could possibly be. Where would it exist? For whom? What? How? Where would it be? Nobody knows. I mean, doesn't make sense to me. The concept of something existing and nobody knowing about it, it's beyond me. That's why I've got to. I'm not saying you're wrong or anything. I understand your point, but my point is my very strong point, which a lot of people don't like. A lot of people is there is nothing beyond knowledge. There cannot be. There cannot be.
Not for humans. I agree with you
Well,
completely.
in that case, we're going to speak about that's something else. Well,
But
if you agree, then that's fine.
right.
I don't know about knowledge about rats and about snakes and beetles. I not going into that. Mine is human, individual, personal, subjective knowledge. That some of which we share and some of which we don't, but it doesn't matter. That's another question. I didn't have time to get into that. But anyway, no, you're right. I understand what you're saying. Thank you very much. You can come in again soon whenever you want. Thank you very much for it. Kerry,
All
go
right.
for me.
I came for the rose garden.
You're not gonna.
What's going on?
You're never gonna get it here.
All right, all right. You could have done an alternative title, When Narratives Collide. I think that's a lot of what's going on here.
Yeah, okay.
But so just so I'm clear on what you're saying, if you say what we know is what is, you're using a very different definition of knowledge than the traditional epistemology of justified true belief. It sounds like you're using experience as a substitute. Is that correct?
I'm using knowledge.
Well, but if knowledge is justified true belief,
I didn't say it is.
that's what I'm saying. I think you're using a very, very different definition.
I'm sorry
And
about
that, okay. So do you, for you, is knowledge direct experience?
In knowledge, direct experience. I don't know. It's a good
Okay.
question. I have to think about that.
Because the other word that I have there's what knowledge is, that we need to define that. There's what something is, But when there's also this idea of when you say the Eiffel Tower, you've kind of changed what the word the means, because most people treat it as this singular communal object that we have this intersubjective experience of, and an independent experience. And I think we need to wipe out that idea of the as implying all of that, right? Because if somebody tells me about the Eiffel Tower, let's say you're on the phone, you're on the Eiffel Tower, and you're telling me about it, and I've never heard about it. My experience of whatever it is called the Eiffel Tower is very, very different than your experience. There's almost zero meeting of the minds there, other than the name. And maybe to name a thing is to create a thing. That's an idea that goes back, to biblical times and probably before. But I think this comes down, you quoted Harari, he waxes poetic about intersubjective narratives. And I think that's why I said, when narratives collide, because that's what we've got going, is a lot of people identify with the narratives that seem to make sense. And yes, they are constructions. But I think there are two challenges that or questions. I hope they're challenging, but I think that would help illustrate this. One, what's going on when in a dark room our toad discovers a table leg, right? That we had no expectation, but boy, it sure announces itself, with great fanfare. And the second question is, under your view, does God exist?
Is that a question you want me to answer?
Well, I want to know if I'm thinking of this correctly, because my answer is yes and no, depending on who you're asking.
I agree.
Which is kind of interesting.
It's interesting that you mentioned God, by the way. I don't want to annoy too many people. I'm annoying enough
Sorry.
people. I'm annoying enough people as it is. But
all you had to do is provide a rose garden, and I would have been just.
You're
happy.
right. Then you could call me God. Fair enough. The thing about what I don't understand is why people are so keen to say that there is objective knowledge or objectivity. I don't understand that, because that is believing in something that's above us, that will save us the problem of thinking, because there's this thing that does the thinking for us. And those same people who do not believe in objective facts, objectivity at all, and etc. Those are the same people who believe in free will, which is a complete, the two go against each other, contradictions. I'm amazed by this. That real liberals just won't, just insist that there must be objective truth somewhere. And I'm saying, but why? What are you talking about? Is there free will or isn't there? They'll say, yeah, there is. Well, then why do you believe in that? That I had to get that in somewhere. So thank you for annoying other people now.
You blame it on me. I'll take it.
Thank you very much, Kerry. James, hey, how you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, no, this was a little more interesting than I expected. I guess my first take, I don't know what to say first. The first thing, right, is that you're kind of philosophically stuck in the 5th century BCE.
Oh.
There's no philosophy for you,
Oh.
in Greece after 5 BCE, because you sort of ignore those guys, and you don't have their grasp. You don't have Aristotle's grasp of metaphysics, which is kind of like part of the key to thinking outside absolute subjectivity. So I think that's the basis of what you're doing, what you've done in your point of view. But the what is really I guess what is really I guess what is really interesting to me is the fact that you can have absolute subjectivity and be happy. In other
Wow.
words, yeah, you can just simply be uh, completely inside your own subjective reality, and then or anti-reality, as it were, and and understand that other people have their own fully subjective reality or anti-reality, subjective views, which you say can't be the truth, but that they but they but they can be talked to. You can deal with them, you can realize with them, you can say, I don't agree that you're on the moon right now, things like that. So so you can experience happiness. And who said wow? I'd like to know. Thank you.
Not me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, yeah, that's
That's fine.
basically what I have to say. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not an epistemologist. I was really interested in kind of like epistemology. The thing with epistemology for me is that you have to be very careful that you're not mistaken, because the mistakes cost you. If you have mistakes in knowledge, you're going to basically suffer if you deny facts. They're going to come and bite you, and
Wait
these
a
can
minute.
be bad.
You're
Yeah, go
saying,
ahead.
no,
Yeah,
you're now saying there are facts, which I
yes,
say,
of
I
course.
say there are,
Yeah.
of course. That's it. What do you mean, of course? There are facts.
Well, facts are kind of things that are shared knowledge. In other words, if you have like an understanding that majority of Americans, or maybe a majority of Frenchmen, the better argument, a majority of Frenchmen identify as Christians, something like that. That's a fact, and it's something that can be illustrated statistically and scientifically, and that's why we call it a fact. And Josh says, who Searle said facts are irrational. I'm waiting for him to back that up, because that's really interesting statement from, if that's true, from Husserl. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's called interpretation, of course. And thank you very
Yeah.
much, James. Thank you. Frank, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Good. Um, yeah, as usual, I approach this topic from the psychology perspective. And, from psychology, basically there's a good reason to believe that all psychology is evolutionary psychology. So, the notion of the idea of reality versus perception of reality, are two very different ideas, but I have the capability to have both questions in my mind at the same time. So can I prove that reality exists independent of myself? No. But I think that there's a certain kind of logical proof, where you take certain uncontroversial statements to support a more controversial statement. That kind of supports the existence of something beyond myself before I existed. From psychology, we know about object constancy. To take that idea and then extrapolate it to before the present, that's essentially how astrophysicists come to the conclusion that there was a Big Bang, right? I mean, basically, they start with some uncontroversial types of statements, that I see this here and I see this there, and tomorrow I see it. I will probably see it again. Yesterday I saw it. Uh, they seem, when I track them over time, they go away from each other. I can then, in my mind, picture a world where they come back together, and then extending that back into time, they come to a singularity, right? So does that prove that the things were the same way yesterday? No. Does it prove that there was a Big Bang? No. But it does have evidence that supports that view, right? That view that this existed. Now, the other side of it, the not the knowledge based on perception, is the notion that we as human beings, evolved to survive, thrive, and reproduce in a medium-sized world. Survive first of all, because otherwise none of us would be here to, enjoy this great, presentation. Thrive, we want to improve ourselves, right? We want to get better and reproduce so that there's a continuity in our species going forward. Now, basically, we're a bunch of, wetware that has very low resolution capabilities to look at the outside world, right? Our eyes, have a certain level of resolution of things. And in fact, our eyes are continually going back and forth and, literally not making the solid picture that I see on the screen in front of me. They're literally going back and forth continually. Neurons in my brain play a trick that kind of smooths that out so that you appear to be consistent, and that I, as an observer, appear to be consistent from a perceptible point of view, so that I subjectively exist, which is the basis of consciousness, right? So there's, this is all a neuronal trick that evolution provided options for selection in the environment. So when we say something like, does money exist? I think that we can agree that money does not exist in and of itself. If it's just me, myself, I have no use. If I'm the only thing that exists, I have no use at all for even the concept of money, because the whole purpose of money is transactional between me and another person. So not only, Ron, do we need to prove the existence of that I exist, I think we need to have two people whenever there's a transactional system involved, which is, the basis of communication, right? The only purpose of the concept of money is for you and I to be able to communicate about something that we exchange, right? It has no value for myself. Okay, so there's that. Now, I wanted to just briefly touch on your notion of the theory of everything, because as I said, we evolved to survive, thrive, and reproduce in a medium-sized world, that's around our size, 2 meters, 1 to 2 meters to an extent. We have no direct knowledge of things way smaller than us. That's the quantum, quantum mechanics is in that world. And we have no ability to perceive things way larger than ourselves. That's, relativistic, it's Einstein's relativistic things. Theory of everything is kind of shorthand to say, let's try to find a way to combine the best theory of the small, quantum field theory, and our best theory of the really large, theory of the really large. How can we come up with a theory that will combine these two? That's what they call the theory of everything. In regard to Schrodinger's cat, and I'll finish on this. Schrodinger's cat, as somebody else before mentioned, was very clearly a joke. Schrodinger said that he was intentionally mixing up a medium-sized entity like a cat with something that is only exists in the realm of the very small, quantum mechanics, right? The quantum superposition is so minuscule when it comes to medium-sized objects that it's virtually, it's infinitesimal in terms of its effect, right? It only has an effect in the world of a very small. So he was saying this as kind of a joke, as a way for people to imagine what the world would be like from the quantum level ability. And my last comment is that, in terms of that joke, they asked another physicist at the same during contemporary. They asked Werner Heisenberg if he thought that joke was funny, uh, and he said he was uncertain. So, but I'll end there.
Yes, yes, I know that about Heisenberg, but so many people take it really, really, really seriously. Yeah, I wonder how many books have been written about it. And I see it as something very simple. You see it as something really, really, really complex, and I don't, because I'm a yeah. I used to believe, I don't like the word, but I used to be for ontology. It took me a while to realize that I'm just wrong. And then I went very, 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 very seriously on epistemology, and I don't see any wiggle room. I can't see how anything can exist that we don't know about. Yeah, if you're talking about the seriousness of the tiny, tiny, tiny thing in that experiment, that thought about the cat, well, we don't know about that very, very, very small thing. All we can know is whether the cat is alive or dead. That's all we can do.
Well, it's a joke, right? I mean,
Yeah, but
the cat is truly either alive or dead. It's a medium-sized object. The quantum effects have almost infinitesimally small effect on medium-sized objects, right? So
well,
but it's the vial that gets broken based on observing a quantum superposition state. He was trying to say that these things, trying to have people understand that there's a physical representation of that. And the other thing I will say, Ron, is that you insist that you're not solipsistic, but doesn't mean that you're not.
you're right. I accept what you say. I don't agree with it, but I know what you said. You're right. All right. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much, Frank. Richard, you're on.
I'll unmute myself. I must admit that I find it quite interesting looking at other people's studies. I realize how untidy mine is, probably like my mind, and how all my books are double stacked. And I've just noticed that I have a copy of Michel Foucault down there at the bottom, and I can't reach it any longer because I can't bend over. And I realize my wife's put all the philosophy books at the bottom because she's not interested in them. And then we double stack things and I don't know where they are. Anyway, so I haven't read any philosophy for many years. Right. I would like to say that the person who was just on, and I've forgotten already who it was touching on something I'd like to say, and that is you're talking about metaphors. It's language that's confusing us, really. When we look at whatever the physical world is, I won't call it reality because the real tends to say it's religious in some way. I mean, but when we look at something, we can't actually say what it is. We have to use metaphors. Everything is metaphor. Language is metaphor. When you talked about grabbing the bull by the horns, you didn't really mean literally a bull because, well, I've had more experience, I think, of bulls than you, but you don't want to do that, mate. Basically, everything you were saying was a metaphor for something else. And I've been thinking about language all the way through, and I can only think because everything is so complicated and it's complexity that really consumes us, and you choose such big subjects, it's much easier if you limit the subject area that you're talking about. But when you're talking about such a big subject, you can't be precise because people wander off into all sorts of areas, which may be amusing, but you're not actually trying to get to the problem. Right. Now, if we're using language to try and mean some literal meaning, you would have to use a formal language. And the only one that I can think, well, the simplest one that I can think of, where the whole thing is bounded very rigorously, would be to describe pencils. Now, everybody, okay, possibly if nobody knew a pencil existed, it wouldn't exist because it would never have been invented. But we've got pencils. They had to work out some way of grading how hard they were. And they've got this scale, and the language is so simple. It's just got H or B or HB, and it goes up to, I've forgotten what, 10H or 12H or something. But anyway, we all know roughly what a 2H or a 4H or 4B is, and we know what it will be used for, whether it will be used for drawing or whether it will be used for making incredibly precise lines. And it's that understanding when we're communicating with each other. So really, it doesn't matter to some extent. Oh, another metaphor that you used, although chap before me called it a joke, it was a humorous metaphor maybe, but it was a metaphor to make people understand what was happening in physics. And I still don't understand it anyway, but it was to try to make people understand something that was almost inexplicable if you weren't an expert in that area and doing research in that area. Everything we use language, it's like talking about colors. How do I know you think of the same colors? Okay, you say that until something is described. Well, the best example, I have used this before in your talks, was blue. Until the Egyptians invented the color blue, the Greeks described it as wine dark sea. Nobody actually had picked it out as being a separate color. It was the color of the sea. And the sea, as you know, verges from grey to nearly black. But they didn't have a word, and I can't remember whether it was because of pottery or because of clothes, but dyes. But the Egyptians actually invented a word for this colour, blue. And then everybody said, oh, of course, the sea's blue. We go round like that. So it's a matter of human understanding. And the way I would put it is, I think, and this is purely me, there is a physical world. Human beings don't have very good senses. Partly it's because for what we do, our senses are limited, otherwise we wouldn't have survived. We have ways of describing that world. We all create our own conceptual model of the world. That is purely subjective. However, we are describing something the same, and that exists. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to eat, we wouldn't be able to swim, we wouldn't be able to blow each other up, we wouldn't be able to shoot each other. So there are shared things within that. And reality, if you like, is what we share. It's never real. Truth is never with a capital T. You'd have to be religious to believe in truth. You'd have to believe in God or saints or devils or something ridiculous. That's why Trump can get away with lying so often, though. It's because we have created a genuine problem in linguistics and philosophy that the naive, I'll put myself as one of them, but the very naive then, I won't say stupid, people, when they're told that there are different types of truth and they have a foundation in philosophy, but can you deny that if you can compare, you can count the numbers, for instance, of the people that gathered for Trump's inauguration and I don't know, Kennedy's or one of the Democrats, and you can see it wasn't the largest ever. You can see that there are some things, okay, there may not be anything that is true with a capital T, but there are some things that are more true than others. And the problem is when we mix up us talking about philosophical problems and linguistic problems and the outside world getting hold of these partial ideas, and bad actors will say, then trying to use some of those ideas to say that there is no such thing as truth at all. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Richard. I have a huge problem with approximate truth, or there's a closer truth than other truths. You can get closer to the truth. I have no idea what that possibly means. Seriously.
You do get people who actually lie about things, and that is the opposite of trying to be. Not
necessarily. People who you think lie about things might actually believe that what they're saying is true, and often do. I am sure that Trump thinks that what he says is true. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
I believe, allegedly, from what I've read, that he has been shown to cheat at golf. I mean, okay, that's not quite like cheating at cricket, but you must know when you're doing that.
No, you don't. Not when you're a narcissist. No, anyway, we're going into psychological things, which is not my thing. But there's a problem with saying there's closer truth and there's further away truth. I have a huge problem with that. Huge. But anyway, thank you very much, Richard. Michael, would you be a gentleman if you have the time to allow Jenna to come in before you? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Are you sure? Thank you very much. Jenna, where are you? Ah, there you are. Jenna, you're quite new, so Michael very, very kindly gave up his place for you. So off you go.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for the presentation as well. I don't know if I understood correctly, if you paused this question, but my understanding is, are you asking earlier, are we striving to find objective reality? And it seems like something that you are, trying to ask for the group, because I kind of have like an answer with that.
You can answer it, but I did not ask it.
Okay.
I've never
All
asked
right.
it.
Okay. Yeah, so in my point of view, as part of like a more collectivist society, so I think that emphasis of a group harmony and like in the shared values, we have like the tendency to lean more of like finding like the objective reality, or at least like the shared and consistent understanding of reality. Because for us, like the sense of truth can reinforce a social cohesion, and also like it will gonna minimize the individual deviation, and that could disrupt these collective effort that we are trying to have. Whether or not it is always helping, probably it's not, because I feel like the concept of subjective reality to each individual could still like alter our perception of this shared reality that we're having. And I kind of relate that with what you discussed as well last month, which I feel like, and I think you also mentioned that earlier, that is related to intersubjective reality, which I think Carrie mentioned earlier, and the imagined order. I guess that's just like my point for now. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's not so much of a question or a point, I guess.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Jenna. No, I understand what you're saying. That's some. Who else? What was it? Josh or was it Alan who's talked about? We have to find something useful for our theories, right? And unfortunately, my theories are not very useful. I mean, they are very muddling and very, very awkward, and I can't help that. I mean, if you go into metaphysics, you think, what the hell? Why would we talk about that? But loads of people keep on coming to these meetings. Most of which do not have any real use. And you're talking about what is useful and which is very, very good. And I understand what you're saying, because if you go for what I said, we're in trouble, because it's so unsteady. If you can't put your hands on something or stand on something that's solid, then what's left? The only thing is left is the fact that we're using our minds, or whatever it is that we're doing, in order to exercise them at the very, very least, or at least look beyond what will help us. And that's a very, very awkward thing to do. I admit it. That's why I'm I don't sleep a lot. But I mean, yes, you don't always get what you want, as the Rolling Stones said, but you also don't always get what is useful. You might get to stuff that's very, very worrying, but that doesn't make it, and I won't use the word right, it doesn't make it valid to think about it. But I agree with you, Jenna. I agree with you. But I just want to mention that sometimes things are very, very awkward, and sometimes we have to live with them, and sometimes we don't. I mean, if somebody's religious, it's very nice. Things are set out for you. You don't have to think such a lot. It's fine. That's all right, as long as I leave everybody else alone. It's fine. I have no problem with that. But I agree with everything you said, Jenna. I'm with you on that. So thank you very much.
Can I just
Yes.
like a comment on that? Okay, yeah. So I think with what you're saying about with this philosophy discussions, like a friend actually said that they view it like it's like an intellectual masturbation for some, but I think like last time when I was in another meetup about a Zeno paradox, so I kind of relate one of the theory that they posited there in project management, in which is something that I do, in which in project management we have like the tendency to divide several tasks, or the project in several tasks and sprint, in order to accomplish goal on each of them, to have a definition of goal for each of them, in order also to have like a sense of result. But the paradox with that as well, the more that we are also like dividing it, the more that we are always just like having it in smaller bits. It seems like we're magnifying or focusing so much also in each task that probably will gonna derail us achieving a result. So yeah, kind of I related in the project management in a way that we have to find a balance. So I guess like probably it sounds theoretical to deal with some of the philosophical theories, but I guess like in the grand scheme of things, there's still like an application of that in practical lives. So that's just my point. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jenna. Thank you. Michael.
Sauron, you're provocative as usual, which may be a good thing, but from my standpoint, maybe you're not provocative enough, because I think, but you can correct me if I am wrong, that what you described as epistemological anti-realism is what I call subjective materialism. Let me explain what I mean under this. It's you can come to this from several different directions. Philosophically, this is related to Russellian monism. That's his idea that every system can have, as he called it, extrinsic and intrinsic properties. Extrinsic is what we can describe using physics, and intrinsic is what it is for a system itself. And we cannot directly experience the intrinsic properties of other system because we are not that system. So it's related to this famous question, what does it feel to, or what does it mean to be a bat? Moreover, I don't know what does it mean to be you. Although we are more similar since we both are humans, but still we are different entities. We don't have direct experience of each other. I would extrapolate it even further that maybe every system, it does not need to be conscious, can have some sort of this intrinsic view of the world, which we have no direct access to because we are not the system. Then another point is that I'm trained as a physicist, and physics is an experimental science. And so if we have any debates about any facts, say, or existence of anything, so the first question to ask is how can we measure it? How can we what experimental procedures could we follow in order to establish that this fact is true or not? The last observation is that if all that I can directly experience is what I can directly experience, right? It's what I feel, it's what I can remember. You can say that we cannot rely on our memories, and by the way, our feelings, our sensory inputs, they can also be misleading. But as a starting point, that's all that I have, right? Someone mentioned that you can be perfectly happy accepting as a solipsist, and yes, that's right, because you cannot prove it, you cannot disprove it. So if your experience is all that really exists, there is no way to prove that you're wrong. But then, as a part of my experience, I also have a free will. Again, you can argue that it's not real, that it can be an illusion, it can be like everything can be deterministic, but as a starting point, that's all that I have. I can decide what I make from my subjective experience. And I can decide whether I assume that this is all that I have, if I want to be a solipsist, or I can decide that maybe there is something behind it, something that I maybe tentatively accept that is some sort of reality, and that other things that I see as part of my experience, like other people, even if they appear only on Zoom, that they probably are also real. And see how far can I get by assuming this. And it's turned out that I can get pretty far. So I can interact with other things and other humans and arrive at experience which is collective. Maybe it's still subjective, but I would call it shared experience with other people. And arrive at consistent models of the world, and including model of myself, maybe models of other people, which I can be pretty happy with. So if I make this choice, then if I arrive at something that makes me more satisfied, more content with this, why should not I make this choice? So it's perfectly fine if other people don't make this choice. But I suppose that most scientists still make this choice, because this is how we can establish our approximation of truth, or this common understanding of the world, through comparing our experiences. And this is how we can correct for our faulty memories, by finding the ways of recording our experiences, documenting them. And this is never perfect, and we can never prove that this is perfect, and there is some reality behind this. But it looks like we can get somewhere from accepting this waypoint, building on my own subjective experience, going to our collective or shared subjective experience, and going to assumption that there is some material world which our experience is reflecting somehow. And also Josh made another very good point, that everything is in interactions, everything is relational. And so it's perfectly fine if different observers have different experience observing the same thing. And there is this whole branch recently developed called relational quantum mechanics, that actually it makes it in quantum mechanical formalism that pretty elegantly explain this Schrödinger's cat paradox and some other paradoxes of quantum mechanics. So I think that this is a very profound idea. So I guess my main point is that accepting the primacy of my subjective experience for me and everyone's subjective experience for everyone, it does not necessarily contradict the existence of some shared reality, some material world, although it would contradict the idea that we can ever achieve a perfect understanding of this world, or perfect knowledge of this world. It's all in approximations. It's always relative to everyone's perspective, but this relativity, it's also relative. So we should not take it as an absolute. So we cannot achieve absolute knowledge, but we cannot absolutely deny the possibility of achieving any, at least, useful knowledge. So I guess that's my view, and you can tell you how close it is to your view.
Michael, you'll be surprised to know I agree with every word you said, because you said, better than I did maybe, exactly what I was saying. I never said there's anything wrong with it. On the contrary, I said we all live with it. We all live with having different knowledge about different things, and the fact that we know that other people have different knowledge is fine, and that's how we live. And you talked about approximation. Definitely, I completed my talk about approximation. It all works because of approximation, and it all works because we know that our subjective views are subjective to us, and we can live with them knowing that other people have their subjective views. That's what I said. I agree with you. Why do you think that you were contradicting me? You might have been.
No. I did not say this. I just wanted to hear your opinion how much it is in alignment.
No, I agree with.
I'm glad to hear that it is. So yeah.
Very surprised. Yeah, no, very surprisingly, I agree with every single word this time. No, I agree with you. It's how it works. It works approximately, and it works okay. Not always. There are many cases where it doesn't, but generally, and look, we come here, we sit for a few hours, and basically we flow. We disagree, we agree, and yet we think, and we're all different, all of us, every single one, as you said, and yet it works, which is remarkable when you think about it. But on the other hand, it isn't, because we're all human. So basically it works. It just how deep you go into it, and you realize if you go really deep into it, it shouldn't be working, but it does, which is also strange. But anyway,
yeah. And so that's why I can accept it as a hint that there is something there. Maybe not exactly what how it appears, but there is something that we all can somehow share.
That we know.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Well, there you are then. 100% agreement. Brilliant.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank
all
you.
Right.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. William.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I was intrigued by your distinction between inside and out, because I think it reflects everything we're talking about here today. And by that, I mean, what's inside in epistemology? What's inside in epistemology, it seems to me, is our belief systems, our emotional states, our convictions, our experience, our ideologies, and our philosophies. And I think that's important. And the idea that you have an inside out is a convergence of outside world and inside head or emotions. And that's an important distinction for me, because it means that we're talking about something that is numinous on the one hand, and the other thing is a phenomenon on the other. And that distinction is played out, I guess, in philosophy a long time. But my notion is here that we have a lot of ways to talk about inside and outside. And inside means we're thinking about our subjectivity, and it's a total subjectivity. And it influences how we think about perspectives on the world. And that's important. And I think that's your point too, that you're saying it's all relative to our perspective. And our perspective is a function of a convergence of our thinking selves and our reality that we face. And I think that's really important thought. And I wanted to say this. I think we're going forward in a world that is now gone beyond the idea that there is a inside outside in terms of phenomena and noumena. And we're now in a situation where it's a matter of data and analytics, because analytics are head work and data is actual perspective outside work. You collect the data and you interpret it. And interpretation is the convergence you're talking about in epistemology, aren't you? Yes. The convergence is very important to understand the dynamics of going forward, because it is an issue of lying that has to be sorted out when the subjective heads of state are screwing us. On the other hand, it's important to understand whether they're telling us the truth. And sorting out the idea that there's a convergence of inside and outside is very clearly what we're talking about here. I just think it's a good idea that you brought to the table, and I wanted to thank you for it.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you. Thank you. I can't usually see the chat, but I did see Reggie's comment. Sorry, Reg, I just caught it. It's true what you say. What I say is causes uncertainty. It's awkward, but as I said, I didn't promise you a rose garden. It's a lot of stuff is very awkward. It's very uncertain. Everything is approximate, and approximation is awkward. It's much easier for things to be certain. I can't help that. I can't do anything else but put forward the ideas that might come out as being very difficult and awkward. You're not standing on anything solid. I agree with you, and I apologize for that, but there's nothing I can do about it. Thank you for the comment, Rich.
You don't need to apologize for nature. That's what it is.
What did you say? I didn't hear.
You don't need to apologize for nature, for reality.
Well,
that's what it is.
Don't mention the word reality.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bill. Roland, been very patient.
Yeah, hi. Hopefully, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so the conversation's taken some interesting paths, as it were, but and there are some big topics. But I'd like to sort of, I suppose, go back to sort of where it started, talking about existence and ideas around this. And the reason for it is I feel that the question of knowledge and how it works underpins everything that we can talk about. All these other ideas that have come out of it, you know, about objectivity and the idea of, say, being in a world, all these sort of ideas are aspects of knowledge. Whenever we ask ourselves why or how or where or whatever, we're looking for knowledge. So to me, one of the most intriguing things is, how does it work? You know, what is this thing, knowledge? Not merely how to work out the distinctions between different types of knowledge, or whether knowledge is consistent or not, but where does it come from? What's it about? And so I think it's very hard to see knowledge as anything other than a behavior. I mean, when we talk about we know this, we know that, this person knows something, we are talking about a behavior. It's a way of behaving. Knowing is a behavior, just like eating or jumping or whatever. So from that point of view, it's hard to see that any behavior can exist outside something that's doing the behavior. So I've discussed that point with a lot of people over the years, and I still haven't found anyone who can demonstrate how knowing can happen without something that is knowing. So that for me is a bit of a bottom line. Now, what then comes out of that is, how does that work in relation to, for example, formulating objects, considering the past, considering the future? And I think to me there is a simplicity behind this. If we see objects as recognition of patterns that we experience, then it makes sense to have some framework in which knowledge can be experienced by us. If I see an object, the first thing that it must have is some sort of history and some sort of future. So I would say that an object, when we perceive it, the construction we make of it, the knowledge we create of it, has to have a timeline inherently embedded in it. So, for example, we go back to the issue of the dinosaurs. Now, I have to agree with Ron that it's not possible for dinosaurs to have existed before they were known about, in terms of someone knowing about them. No one could have said this dinosaurs exist, because that wasn't on the cards to do. There was no construct. But suppose when we create an object, when we formulate an object, at the same time we're formulating a timeline, and we predict what may happen with that object in the future, and we also predict what has happened in the past. So we have two ideas of existence here which are blurred together, and I think this is one of the reasons for a confusion around this. If when we construct knowledge, something becomes extant, it comes into existence, that makes sense. But then once we've done that, we've created the idea of an object with a timeline, we can then hop onto that timeline and imagine basically what has happened for things to have reached this present experience we've got. So I think in considering the word exist and the implications of that, we are using the word in two different ways at once. And that's why it's confusing. When knowledge comes into existence, we create it. Something new happens. We know about it. Like, for example, Ron's Eiffel Tower example. At that point, when the knowledge comes into our awareness and we create the idea of an Eiffel Tower, it comes with its own timeline, because it couldn't be anything else. We can't have the idea of an object that just suddenly snaps into being or snaps out of being. So my comment here is that the timeline of an object is a fundamental part of how we perceive objects. And so in a sense, you could see objects as four-dimensional. So that to me makes sense of the word exist. We don't have to say that that dinosaurs never existed before humans. We can say that the knowledge of dinosaurs didn't exist before humans, but now I know about them, I can imagine a timeline in which the object makes sense to me. So this then turns the idea of knowledge into a convenient form of a convenient tool that we can use in order to anticipate future events. And I can't really see any other reason why we should have knowledge other than as an anticipatory device to enable us to interact better, to survive, basically, to continue. So I suppose that's a brief idea about what I would see the purpose of knowledge is. The idea that knowledge is referable to an outside is very appealing as an idea, but I wonder whether it's necessary. We know that we can't actually access this outside that is being talked about because there's no evidence for it. There is evidence that we get. We have an experience of something happening, but we can't get this unobservable thing. So I wonder whether it's actually of any use to us to even think about it. Another way of thinking about it is to go, well, okay, what are we actually modeling when we start to construct knowledge? And my answer to that is we're not modeling change. We're just modeling how we expect change to happen. So as far as I can see, it would be possible, I've not done this, but I can't see why it wouldn't be possible, to get rid of the idea of objectivity altogether and instead focus on the idea that something is going to happen. And the patterns of expectation that our knowledge creates then are used to make predictions, which is, after all, what they're for. So that's another slant on knowledge. And I think the interesting thing from my point of view about that is that it actually makes it useful because it becomes a clearly anticipatory tool. We don't need to worry about whether something is true or false. It doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is whether it works. So I'll stop there for the moment because that's quite a long time. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Roland. I have a very slight problem with a timeline, because where are you going to with that timeline? Are you going to what really happened, or what you think really happened, or is it's leading up to the object? So where's the timeline going?
Well, the timeline is basically just the idea of it's a modeling structure. Just as we might draw a diagram of something to understand the relationship between things, why should we not be able to model our predictions about how events will happen in the future according to a timeline? In other words, we can go, okay, this thing I am experiencing right now, what is going to happen to it? Okay, you might have a series of experiences. For example, you might see something moving in a particular direction, and by using the information that you've experienced, you can predict how it might progress and also where it's come from. So neither of those things are objectively true, but they're parts of a modeling process that we can use in order to make predictions. So as far as I can see, a timeline could extend forwards or backwards as far as one wants it to. It doesn't mean that the imagined past really happened, or that the imagined future will really happen. It simply serves as a model for us to make, for us to act upon in order for predictable things to happen. It's like a scaffolding.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have to think about that.
In the same way, I mean, for example, Michael might have more of a take on this, but for example, in self-driving cars, vehicles that are able to navigate themselves, they will create a picture, an internal picture, according to their particular structure of how events are expected to unfold based upon information they've got and predictions that they will make about so they will construct objects from the data they receive and then make predictions, so create a timeline as to what is going to happen to that object, to themselves, and obviously act accordingly. So in each of those occasions, there's a fourth dimensional internal object being created in order to enable safe navigation. And that makes sense. I'm sure I haven't got the details perfectly right, but I think the basic idea is of internal modeling of objects with timelines. So I don't see why we shouldn't be doing the same thing. I mean, why else would be what else would be the point of having knowledge other than some purpose, something that enables us to continue to survive into the future? So it must be anticipatory.
I'm not sure about the point of things, but anyway, that's
okay.
That's another story.
I'd be very interested on Michael's take on the self-driving car thing, though. But I believe he's been involved in something like that from our previous conversations. But.
Is he still here? Oh, yes, he's still here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure you're thinking about it now. John M. Do you have your vid? There you are. There's
hey, Ron.
Another walker. Josh, we got two walkers on. Anyway,
good
welcome.
to see you again.
Yep, welcome back.
Thanks. This was a very engaging talk. I'm here at the fair and I could follow your presentation. So that means that was succinctly put, which I appreciate. So let me ask you, taking your claim that for something to exist, people have to know about it. And then going to the example of the cat in the box with the superposition of the electrons or whatever it is. Does it matter what the status quo of knowledge is at the time you put the cat into the box, or for that matter at any time? So when I put the cat into the box, it's alive. And in my mind, does that mean that to me the cat is alive until I find out otherwise? Even though when he's in the box, there's a 50% chance he's going to die? And then taking that question further, if that is the case, would that change if, say, the chances of him dying increase to 60% or something like that? Let me know what you think.
It's an epistemological point. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If we don't know, we don't know. It only matters when we open the box.
So you're saying the status quo does not matter. You put the cat into the box, and to you now the cat is in a state of flux.
No, not in a state of flux. I have no idea I have no idea. Knowledge doesn't come into it anymore. All I know is there's a cat in there. It's either alive or dead. I'll find out if you open the box. That's all. There's no flux as far as I'm concerned.
So let me just ask another question. Taking the example of the dinosaurs. We discovered that they existed 100 million years ago. And that was knowledge that came into existence, you said, like 1850 or something. Let's say that at that time, somebody proposed that there was some other species that developed between the dinosaurs and us. Does now that species exist to a certain extent because he's been hypothesized, because it has been hypothesized?
If we're told that, then it becomes knowledge, then I'll accept it or not accept it. But it didn't exist at the time that you say that it did exist, because there was nobody around to know it. I mean, that's what Roland said as well. I mean, how?
But what if I tell somebody, I go, hey, this species existed 80 million years ago.
Okay, fair enough. Now we know that it existed, but we only know it existed when we're told about the fact that it existed. If it was a fact at all, I've got no idea. If people tell me that there are subatomic particles whizzing around, and they can prove it and show me, that's fair enough. But until they appear, they don't exist, because I don't know where they are. I mean, I don't even know they're there, although I'm told they're there somewhere, but they're not really. They're probabilities. That's all I know, because I'm told that. And it might be true and it might not be. I mean, in 100 years, they might find out the whole of quantum mechanics was a load of rubbish. It's possible, isn't it? I mean, after all, look at all the things that happened in the past that we told were true science, and we realized, no, they weren't. But were they true then? I would have to say, and you won't like this, yes, they were. According to the information at that time, that was true. I can't say it wasn't true at the time, because they had the information. And we've got information now about things that we're 100% sure are true. In a few years, they'll most probably find they weren't true. Did they then become not true now? No, they are true now.
Okay, so your contention is that the dinosaur bones that were discovered before dinosaurs were hypothesized, and they thought they were just large mammal bones, they were actually large mammal bones. Dinosaurs still did not exist, even though they came across their bones and they physically touched them, because they're assumption was wrong.
Well, yeah. We can
Okay.
only go by what we know. We can't go by what we don't know. And if we later find out we were wrong, we only know now that we were wrong. We weren't wrong at the time because we had the information that made our knowledge correct for what we had. I know a lot of people won't like that. Thank you very much, John. Alan, can I ask you to let Samuel come in, because you've already spoken and Samuel hasn't. I'm sure he's got to go to bed soon anyway. Is that all right, Alan?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Samuel, Alan has very kindly let you move over.
Thank you. So the first thing I'd like to say is comes from what Richard was saying about metaphors, and I think this closely links to concepts and how that links to what we've been talking about. So I would say that if you go back to the dinosaurs and whether the dinosaurs existed and when they started to exist, I would definitely agree that they started to exist when we discovered them, but I wouldn't say that they fully existed as we do. I would say that they more exist as a concept. And I think that throughout this talk, we have to provide the line between things that truly exist and things that only really exist in a concept. And I think in the chat people have been talking about solipsism, and I would definitely agree with solipsism, even though it might seem extreme. I think that at the end of the day, all of our perceptions, they all really just come down to our mind. And I think that most arguments against this can be deal with the distinction between things that exist and things that exist as concepts. I think the only thing we can truly know that completely exists is ourselves, and everything else is mere concepts. And so yes, I'd also like to ask a question. So similar to the one with when the dinosaurs started existing, let's say that you went in a time machine and you went to the future and found out that an alien race was going to live in the world for thousands of years in the future, and you go back and write that down. When did the alien race start existing? Is it when you found out, or is it when we actually reach a stage when they start existing? So yeah, that's my question. So thank you.
That was a very difficult question, mainly because I don't believe in the concept of time travel at all. So I don't know quite how to answer it, because if you're talking about going to the future, it means that you're going to your future. And 1,000 years from now, you will not exist. So how do you go to the future? Is there the future? There has to be a future that you're going to, which has to be yours, as far as I can see. And so I just don't get the whole business of time travel. The more I think about it, the weirder the whole notion is, as far as I'm concerned. It gets even worse going back, by the way. But I don't know if you want to go there. But I don't think we're going to go forward to see an alien race 1,000 years after you're not here anymore. Whose future are you going to? So I'm basically asking, what is the future? And there is no thing as the future. There's our future, our individual future. That's how I see it. So I can't answer your question because of my weird thoughts about time travel. But it's a very good question. I just can't answer it. Thank you very much, Samuel. Thank you. That's it. Thank you. You can come back if you want. You don't need to leave. Alan, you're back again.
Yes. Okay.
Great.
I think I'm going to probably some of the other stuff that's dovetailed in here, but I would propose, similar to what was said, I would propose that data and information exist. And that has to be converted into knowledge. So there's data and there's information out there. And our brain can process that information at roughly 10 bits per second. Our brain works at about that rate. So our senses, our eyeballs, our ears, all of the ways that we take in information, as well as the knowledge that we already have in our memories, are coming in at gigabits per second. So we have to do something to make sense of that. And what we do is we do data compression. So the raw data that exists and is coming in is way too much for us to make sense of. So we compress that data and it becomes an experience. And then we further, so now we have an experience which is rich and, look around the room, look around at all the stuff. But now we have to create knowledge, which is a memory. That is further data compression. We compress that data down and our mind, our brain is doing something to say what's important to remember and what's not important to remember. And that experience, that knowledge is imperfect, obviously, because the raw data that we've taken in has now been compressed down to something that is minuscule compared to it. But all it has to do is allow us, the next time we run into that situation, to not be surprised. We're going to formulate an action on that. So we're now navigating the world. We're making predictions about the future. And what we need to do is decompress that data. We decompress that data and we form a memory that is not perfect, but it has to be good enough to navigate the world. So I'm along the same lines of that was mentioned earlier. What I'm saying is the data exists, and the data exists in the form of all of the stuff that have been discovered out there. Processes, energy, matter, basically the way the universe works. And that is going back to the quantum mechanics, because everything's already interacted. All of the matter that we're going to experience has already interacted. It's gone from quantum mechanical coherence to decoherence, which is now experiencing all of this stuff in the past. So I'd propose that, again, we are creating our knowledge, but those things, that data already exists. It doesn't exist in the form of knowledge. It doesn't make sense as data until we reach back into our past self. So our past self has created a message of knowledge for our present self to navigate the world. And then we reprocess that. We reprocess the new input, and we can change the model of the universe that we have if our model is not working properly. We create new knowledge in order to better navigate the future. So our model of the world is constantly being updated based on new information coming in and being compressed down into our experience. And again, a memory that's now going to be a message for the future. There you go.
Thank you very much, Alan. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Josh, may I move Terry because it hasn't, you've already spoken, Terry hasn't. Is that all right with you?
Absolutely.
Well done. Here, Josh is a gentleman, Terry, and he lets you in his place for the moment. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
One quick comment. I thought those are interesting comments that Alan made about the compression. Very true. The sensor input is absolutely gigantic compared to what we can process with our brains. I would emphasize that it's not just compression, though. The elimination is probably even more important. We have some way of very quickly eliminating noisy things or things we find irrelevant. That's also how we go insane very easily, because if we mess that up badly, the consequences can be dire, and you can wind up eliminating the things you should be paying attention to and paying attention to the wrong stuff. But it's a very interesting mix, and it is truly astonishing how much sensory data we have piling into our brains, and yet we're able to handle it. And this is one of my stock complaints about ChatGPT, is it does the exact opposite. It tries to generate maximum information from what it has. And intelligence in biological organisms do the exact opposite. Elimination is the critical and important part of that. Dinosaurs, do they exist? Yes, they're very tasty. I plan to have some for supper tonight. They're called chickens. We're an older group, and we need to get with the program. The non-avian dinosaurs is the new term for the ones that are not around. And they came close to realizing they were birds when they first found them. They came very, very close. They looked at the feet, they looked at the footprints, they even said, it's a giant bird. And they were right. But then they got all wrapped up around the breastbone. Oh my gosh, there's no breastbone. And that was literally what made the difference. So they decided, oh no, it can't be a bird because it doesn't have a breastbone. And it's amazing how much literature went into that one issue about the breastbone. So the birds need to fly, so they have this breastbone, and there's just huge debates about this issue. It's very funny. So yes, dinosaurs do exist. Now, the other kind of existence, do dinosaurs exist? No, the past doesn't exist. I'm sorry, I'm a radical on this. There is nothing you can stick into the past. There's no metric, there's no ruler you can stick into the past and say, hey, past, what's that look like? All you can do is collect data into your own head, look at that data, and make a model. And from that model, you can say there seems to have been something chicken-like that lived what I will call 100 million years ago, which itself is an abstraction. And that is my idea of a dinosaur. But you cannot do as you can with the chicken, which is me personally tonight, go eat one. And that's a difference, because it means I can go in direct contact. I can bring it into my existence. I can bring it into my contact. I can test it. I can go back and forth. I can iterate on it. I can't do that in the same way with the dinosaur. I can collect information about it, but not in the sense of having the actual dinosaur there in front of me, because that's in the past. And you can't dive into the past. You can't dive into the future. But you can make these models of them. And it's interesting. Every time a physics equation has the word sign T in it, that is a complex processing abstraction that has to be done by an observer. So this is where you get into this. The idea of objectivity is curious, because you have this enormous amount of evidence and predictability and reliability, but you also have this constant constraint that the way we interpret those patterns are the way we interpret those patterns. And it turns out that the past is an incredibly important way of interpreting, a very useful way of interpreting what's happened, until you get into quantum mechanics. Then all of a sudden, you don't know if the electron went through this slit, or it went through that slit, or it went through both slits, because you're trying to apply a universal abstraction to a bit of physics where it doesn't apply. The time and space are not quite as sacred as we think they are. And this is one of those really pointed examples of it. As long as you keep trying to force space-time, your perspective on certain events, you will get trouble, because experimentally, we just know that's not true. It doesn't work that way. I will comment also on the Schrodinger cat. I am very much of the cat observes itself. Lots of things observe themselves. The idea that the fact that we don't know about the cat is not the same thing as saying that quantum superposition exists. that is a supposition that Schrodinger was trying hard to ridicule. He was saying, this is just stupid. This doesn't, this is not what we, he's stupid in the sense of saying, this is not what we see, guys. If you don't see it, why do you keep saying it? And instead, the mathematics community, and especially, just went berserk and said, oh, this is so great. Look at all this stuff. And they just stopped paying attention to the experimental side. So it's been an interesting, ongoing issue for decades. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Terry. Very interesting. Josh, have you been have you been walking all this time?
I was doing a little flying, but you missed that part of it because I had the video. I should have kept the video on. Then you would have seen actual evidence, right, of the existence of my flying.
Pity you can't show it to us.
But it would be in the past.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I was enjoying what both Terry and Roland were saying about the past. And Michael, I guess in different ways, boy, we really all seem to be, in agreement to some extent about that. I would just add, concerning the past, if you think about how we use the past, not only as empirical researchers, right, who create models and timelines of something that happened in the past, but well, and a big chunk of our daily life, a reminiscence will arise, will pop into our head, and we can make it arise, because I don't say I'm in a nostalgic mood or I find myself overwhelmed with this memory of my being 10 years old or this person that I haven't seen in a long time. And I think that the very emergence of that memory at that point is illustrative of the role of memory, because it seems for all the world as if it's absolutely veridical, and we can use it. We can sort of talk about using that as a model. If I say to any of you, imagine when you're a certain age, let's say, 10 years old in a bedroom, and think about, just find yourself sort of observing what you see. Think about starting from your bed and then turning your head in a direction. What do you see? And then follow your line of sight. And it's almost astounding. Not everybody's able to do this. Some people don't have good recollections of their past or their childhood. But for those of us that do, details pop into one's head, the texture of wallpaper or the color of knobs or things like that, that one thought, had forever been expunged. And so if anything would seem to have some sort of, veridical to it, would be something like that. But I would say, no, that is also a reconstruction, and it's a reconstruction for one's present purposes. Another way of putting it is that the past that emerges in our memory is already being changed by what it is being, used for. So it's a kind of a paradox here, that the past is always future oriented, and that's what makes it potentially creative. Now, the other dimension that I wanted to point out was, Roland talked about, and this is a feature that I also would emphasize, that these models are for the purposes of anticipating events, being able to predict future events. And so where I would want to move away a little bit from a kind of a computational internalized model of the sort that maybe Terry seemed to be drawing up, that we do the thinking inside the brain. We sort of number crunch or do this internal representational processing, and then we try and, pattern match or relate it to events out there. I would prefer to argue that, cognition isn't in the head and consciousness isn't in the head. These are distributed processes that take place that can't be understood within the brain, apart from the brain that is embodied. And it can't be understood as an embodied brain apart from its interaction with the world. So all three components, social interaction, embodiment, and brain, are critical, and they can't be separated from each other. And I think the other feature, which is so important here, is that, as Roland said, thinking knowledge is behaving. And I would just add to that, knowledge is changing. In a sense, to know something is to change an aspect of the world. It's to push upon it and then to see how it responds and to see if the way it responds is consistent with our expectation for how it will respond. So to know is to build something. It's to build a niche. We surround ourselves through our technologies and our arts and other aspects of cultures. We build a niche and then we inhabit that niche. And every time we ask questions of that niche by making changes in it, it talks back to us. And so through this back and forth, we modify our thinking. But so if you see what's happening here is that we're not talking about representing an external world, a static external world through internal processes. We're talking about a moving, changing, becoming, that the world is changing along with us. And we're trying to find our way in the midst of this changing world in ways that are optimally anticipatable, so to speak, where we can kind of, roll with the, we're on the river and we kind of, we're going with the flow, and the flow is never stopping, right? It's that Heraclitean flux, but we can kind of find ways of making sense of this flux with these patterns, which themselves are dynamic, they're dynamically interactive with the flux itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Michael.
I feel compelled to comment on some comments, especially related to these dynamic aspects of knowledge and the world. So if we take seriously the relativity and relational quantum mechanics in particular, so it goes further in direction of removing any special status of humans. So according to relational quantum mechanics, human is just a quantum system. Well, a very big one, yes, but anyway. So in relation to Schrödinger's cat, for instance, this implies that it's not that just a human who is an observer, but a cat itself is also an observer. And every part of this system is observing the other parts of the system. And this eliminates this whole paradox. And also, if we ask a question, can our knowledge change? Of course it can. And our knowledge only exists in our minds. But our minds, if we accept the existence of something beyond our minds, it's still relational. So if our theory changes, if our knowledge changes about any aspect of reality, it changes the interaction with this aspect. And so it changed the reality as relative to us, at least. And well, it does not affect the past because the past is no longer here, but it still affects reality in some sense. And this is all that we can say about. I know, Ron, that you don't like this notion of reality, but if you can say something about reality, it's always relative to something. Relative to us or one system relative to another system.
Yeah, fair enough.
And every interaction between any two parts of reality, it changes the reality, it changes these parts. So it's maybe kind of, I don't know, you can feel kind of dizzy from this notion of interact in reality, but that's the picture of the world that is emerging now. And regarding memory, yes, I agree with Terry and Roland that our memories is not just the raw information or the raw data. It involves a lot of processing, filtering, encoding, and so on. And by the way, another interesting, and this is a very new theory that was recently proposed, quantum memory matrix, that was proposed to explain black hole information paradox, but really it's a kind of new theory of space and time, which implies that space-time itself but has memory. So all information about quantum systems is encoded in space-time itself. And they developed some formalism around this, and they explained the black hole information paradox. But whether this theory is right or wrong, we don't know yet. But it's a further step in removing anything special about humans. So memory is not only what we have, not only that other biological systems or some maybe technical systems have, but it can be a very fundamental property of all reality. If this is proven to be true, which of course a big if. And regarding the self-driving cars, well, I'm not involved in self-driving cars, but we are doing something similar, unmanned aircraft systems. So it's self-driving aircraft, if you wish. So simulation of this is very challenging because it's not just 4-dimensional, it's at least 8-dimensional. So in each space-time point for aircraft, it folds the whole 4D representation of interactions with this aircraft and other aircraft, which actually makes it more than 4D because there could be several other aircraft. And you also have to account for velocity and for all other variables. So modeling this is very challenging. But indeed, this is what self-driving cars have to do. So they encode in the sensory input and generate predictions. So it is indeed anticipatory in nature. And there is some psychological evidence that much of our brain function is basically corrections to predictions. And this is another way of compressing the information, that we only pay attention to anything that contradicts our internally generated predictions, which seems to be a very efficient way to design such a system. But another interesting aspect that we did not discuss yet, and probably we will not have time for this, that when we are talking about memory, about predictions, or about anything that describes behavior of a system, whether it's human system or not, it can be described at different levels. So if we look at how this information is encoded and how these predictions are generated at the hardware or wetware level, if you wish, it's all electrical or electrochemical processes, interactions between all these different circuits, neural circuits, and so on. And if you look at this, it appears very complex but meaningless. So you cannot say from this what is going on. So in order to understand the behavior of the system, you have to adopt the right level of aggregation perspective on this system. You have to look at system state as a whole. And I don't know if it is possible to develop any consistent mathematical formalism to define what does it mean the system state as a whole in general case. But this is what we usually do in science. So when we describe the chemical processes, we don't necessarily solve Schrödinger equations. Because we have the high level formalism, and we have high level formalism for describing biological systems and for describing technical systems and for describing mental systems like us or like AI. That's another interesting complication, so to say, in how we can understand the behavior or the system's behavior. I'm trying, Ron, sorry, I'm trying to avoid using the word reality, although it can be challenging, you see. But anyway, it's even more complex. But I guess my point that you have to use the right level of abstraction. And this allows to reduce this complexity to some degree, although not eliminate it. But let me stop at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very interesting. Thank you. Terry.
Hello again.
Hello.
Michael, who was the author with the space-time quantum concept?
Okay, so they call it the quantum memory matrix, and the authors are Newcart, Brecher, and Marx. They are from Netherlands and Switzerland. But if you search for quantum memory matrix, you will find it. So.
Okay, thanks. That's yeah, I don't think I've encountered that one, so that'll be interesting to look up. Josh, you were making comments earlier about the networking that actually I agree with you completely. The idea that I've advocated the idea of network intelligence since 1977, which is kind of going back a ways. It's not that simple. We can't, and I think one of the reasons why human intelligence is so hard to define is because we're networked. And the networking is a huge part of how we function. Otherwise, an individual chimpanzee can be very, very clever, and I would argue a lot cleverer than you can point some examples of people that. But we have this language, we have the structure behind us, and it makes it possible for us to do things. But even at that, I liked your examples. Like I can have little memories that can pop up just from a texture that we encoded back when we were 2 years old. So it's just an amazing set of relationships, and it's not as simple as just me smart, world there. That's not what's going on with that. The relational, Michael, the relational. Carlo Rovelli is a very nice fellow, very nice fellow. I had a long email chat with him, and I'm far too ignorant sometimes of who I'm talking to. So I had this long chat with him about black hole, penetrating the surface of a black hole. And he was very kind, and we went back and forth a number of things. I'd keep throwing his same ideas back at him, and it would kind of backfire. I had no idea he had all the relational quantum mechanical background, so I missed a chance to talk to him more about that. That is interesting. On both those points, I'm actually one of a very small number where I say all information is encoded in matter and energy, and space-time is a complete fiction. That the idea that it is not a complete fiction. There's a very, very weak field that's left over in this. That is complete contrast with quantum electrodynamics. I know that. I'm aware of that. But that's also the part of quantum electrodynamics that predicts the universe will collapse in a microsecond. So it's not the best part of QED. The best part of QED is when it's immersed in matter where it has plenty of information. And there's lots of reasons for that, but it starts with Einstein. He said that everybody sees a vacuum the same. The only way that can happen, despite all the things people talk about it, is if the vacuum is empty. If it has at least bit of matter in it, you instantly have a frame reference, and you can no longer all view it the same way. So this goes back over a century. There's you have to be careful in some of that stuff. So I like the relational stuff is interesting, but I think it's way too quantum at the level. I would take it the other way around. You start with non-quantum, you start with objects, and these ideas of quantum mechanics are actually built from it. The quantum wave function is not a universal function. It's a local wave function, because experimentally, that's what we see. People can talk all they want to about the infinite wave functions. They're not experimentally real. You only create them in a lab from a setup, from a classical starting point, create a quantum wave function. It lasts for a few seconds at most, and then it's gone. And from that, people extrapolate incredible things. And I'm getting too scientific for a philosophical discussion, so I'll leave it at that. But I just wanted to add those bits to that. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Terry. Roland.
Yeah. So I've just made a note of a couple of things that I thought was interesting. Yeah, one of the things that occurred to me when Michael was talking was this issue about reality, which, you know, it's always a problem when we're talking about knowledge, because there's always this question, well, you know, how is all this stuff going on? And that's a really, really difficult thing to get into context. But one of the things I remember thinking about some years ago was if knowledge is all internalized and we are imagining an objective reality, what are we doing it for? Because apparently we have no access to it. We have no means of relying on it, because by definition, it's outside the scope of our knowledge. So what's the point? And the conclusion I came to was that there is a convenience involved in sharing, in attempting to reach shared knowledge with another person or group of persons. There is a convenience in constructing a model which imagines commonality. So if I'm trying to create knowledge about some experience I've got with someone else, then I will want to be finding some method of exchanging my experiences with these other people, and constructing a model that allows us all to interact with it. So that is as close as I can get to the idea of an objective reality. It's simply one that is constructed for convenience to share information across groups of people. That makes quite a lot of sense, though, because then if you understand that's what you're doing, you can shift and change the definition you have of your shared reality as it suits you, rather than believe that you're actually trying to discover something that's outside. And of course, that's what's happened over the years. I mean, there are rules that have been established in science to develop this consistent picture. Rules of evidence, rules of measurement, the formulation of the language of communication. These all come down to a sort of package deal of a shared format of knowledge. I don't see any problem with that at all. The main problem I would see there is if suddenly that shared pattern becomes the truth, rather than just a convenient way of working with people. That's a step across an abyss into nothing. So that was I think the first thing that I thought was quite interesting about that. The other thing that I thought was interesting, Michael, you were talking about the self-flying airplanes, and also the idea of the actual processes going on in these systems, whether it's an airplane or a human body. When you start to zoom in on those processes, they become incomprehensible. And the only way you can really work out what is going on with the system is to observe its output, see what it's doing. That I find a very interesting idea because it relates to work that I've been doing in relation to people by observing the output, the effect, the physiological effect of a behavior or an experience on a person, rather than getting them to identify knowledge. So the physiological output of a trigger of some kind then serves as an indication of how that system is behaving as a whole. And that's quite an interesting idea to play with. So I think that's all I've got to say. But thank you very much. Really interesting, guys. Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roland. John, are you still with us? Your hand is.
Yes.
Ah.
So let me just clarify your view, Ron, before I ask a question.
Could you put on your
Do you believe that
camera? Oh, mind.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hold
Thank
on a
you.
second.
Thanks. Good.
So do you I get a feeling you're subjective. Like, to you, for example, it's dinosaur bone example. It's what the state of knowledge is in each individual person that determines whether or not dinosaurs actually exist. So let's say it's 1850 and this theory just came out that dinosaurs existed. Some scientists believe it, some don't. For the scientists that believe it, you believe that dinosaurs existed. For the scientists that don't, that physical dinosaur bone isn't in fact a dinosaur bone to them, it's a mammal bone. Is that correct?
I suppose so. The point is
okay. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that your view is that things exist based on the subjective knowledge of the person. So based on that, I want to ask you a question. If I get shot through the head with a bullet and I never have a chance to ever know that this bullet existed, it just goes right through my cerebral cortex, kills me, and I'm gone. Does that bullet exist to me?
No. You're
okay.
not.
Thank you.
You're not around to. When you're gone, you're gone. So's everything. All the memory's gone. No, it doesn't.
I was alive for a split second while it went through my brain. When it first penetrated my brain, I was alive, and I was alive until it got here, when I died, and then I was dead when it went all the way through. So when it's right here, but I don't see the bullet coming. I don't, because I would have run if I saw that. But it's right here. It's hitting me. I never have a chance to process it. Do I know? Does that bullet exist?
No. How can it?
Okay.
Who would you tell it to?
So.
No, but I mean, when
who
you're
would
dead.
I mean, I don't think that's entirely relevant. And I'm dead. It killed me, so that's more relevant to me than me telling other people about it.
It isn't. It's not relevant for you to say it killed me, because you're not there to say it.
No, because I'm dead, but I'm talking about the time between it entering my brain here and going through my cerebral cortex here and killing me. So like between here and here does this bullet exist for me?
No.
Okay.
There's gotta be.
Okay, thank you.
I know what you're saying, but when there's nothing, when you're not there, there's nothing out there. There's nothing that you can talk about even now. When you're dead, there's no talking about it. You want to go back to that split second and ask whether at that point you feel anything. but there's nothing. You're gone. There's no telling us about it. There's no knowledge. You don't have any knowledge about it, right? I mean, it didn't happen. It happened to anybody else who saw it, but not to you. It's gone. No, anybody who's dead.
Okay. Yes, I was just.
No, I understand what you're saying, and it's a complicated problem until you analyze the fact that you're talking about it when you're already dead, which is a problem.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just clarifying your position.
No,
Thank
fine.
you.
It's a good question. Thank you. Thank you very much. Michael.
Yeah, it's me again. So I just wanted to clarify that I mentioned two different recent theories just to avoid the confusions. So quantum memory matrix, it's about space-time that have memory of quantum events. It's very recent. It's just developed last year. And another theory is relational quantum mechanics, which is not so recent. It's from 1990s, and its author is Rivelli, and it's about relational nature of interactions between quantum systems. And I don't know if it's possible to establish any relationship between these two different theories because they are so different. But this relational quantum mechanics, it implies an interesting idea about it's again relative to Schrödinger's cat and uncertainty of our knowledge. So you know this idea that the wave function, it can exist in a mixed state, which is the whole point of the Schrödinger's cat paradox. And until you observe the system, the state remains mixed. And only after you take a measurement, then you have this pure state. So, and this is what they call the collapse of wave function. But if you take this idea behind the relational quantum theory seriously, then we could say that what really happens is that a system makes a choice. A system that existed in this mixed state, it really makes a genuine choice, which for observer appears as a collapse of wave function. But really, it could be a spontaneous choice by the system or a choice triggered by interaction with another system or with an observer. So that aspect I found quite interesting. And also regarding the theory's idea about networked nature of knowledge, this is also related to the idea that we have to use the right level of abstraction. Because when we are discussing the human knowledge, we have to realize that this is a collective knowledge. So what exists in my brain or in your brain, it could not be developed and it cannot be understood without taking into account all of this collective knowledge, language, abstract theories, and so on. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Josh. Josh? Are you walking, Josh? Josh? Josh must have stopped walking. Josh? Right. Roland? I think Josh must be resting.
Yeah, you just can't stop us coming back. There's going to be hardly anyone left at the meeting soon. No, I just thought I'd come back on what John was talking about because it's an interesting point, his bullet in the brain thing. And the way I look at this is when something happens, when we experience something happening, and we seek to turn it into something objective. In other words, we try to identify it because a vast amount of our day is spent not identifying anything. We just run autopilot. But obviously, if a bullet hits you, you're probably likely to want to identify it at some point. But there is a sequence, isn't there, of things happen. So there is an experience of something happening. It's like I remember some years ago, in December, I fell into a marina, and because I was thinking about something else, and happened to step off the pontoon, and so that was a very interesting experience for me because I went through a series of, I suppose, reformulations of understanding of what was happening. The first thing was, oh gosh, I'm in the water. I better get out. The second thing was, oh, my right arm doesn't work because I'd broken my right arm as I'd fallen in. So we hit it against something. So as I see it, when we go through experiences, we establish more information about those experiences, and then they can then lock into an understanding from an objectified point of view of what's happening. I'm in the water is an objectification. Oh, my arm is broken. That's an objectification. And then there is a kind of, how do I get out? So with the bullet in the brain thing, if it's like, a fraction of a second before the bullet kills you, then you probably don't have time to go through this process of objectifying something. It's just, maybe a flash of pain, and that's the end of that. But there are lots of other situations where something might happen and we don't know what it is. But then we might gradually get more information or whatever, and then we start to develop an identification, a pattern basically that captures these experiences in some form, which is what I see objectification as. It's basically pattern recognition, not recognition of what is true or what is out there, but basically an interaction with our system that then creates like an interference pattern that we then label and package. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I'm just going to say one thing about the morbid thing about the bullet in the brain. I disagree, and I'm sure you do as well if you think about it. There was no flash and no pain. There just wasn't. If there's you can't talk about that. It didn't happen.
If the person is dead, then it's certainly not happening anymore.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen. How did it happen? There's got to be. It's not that it's gone and you're waking up and say, "Oh, that happened to me." Nothing happened. It's gone. Everything's gone. All of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we can say that nothing's happened. Or nothing can happen because the person has no ability to formulate anything.
Nothing happened to him either.
Whether they had that opportunity just before they died is a different matter.
No,
but
it's
now,
not. It's not a different matter.
Does it not matter? Would it not matter at what point in time one is considering when the knowledge was?
No, when it's gone, it's gone. There's nothing. There's no if somebody's killed. I mean, for everybody else or whatever they think about it, the one who's actually dead is not thinking about anything or thinking about the past or anything.
I can see where this is going. So it's like it's a little bit like my comments about existence. There's two things going on here. There's one is what is the state of knowledge of the person with the bullet in their brain who's dead? Well, there isn't one. But then there is what is our state of knowledge about what might have happened
that's something
before
different.
that person died.
Yes.
So
That's
where,
yes.
yeah.
I didn't talk about that knowledge at all,
Yeah.
about what we think of other people having knowledge. I was thinking about inside the knowledge that we have. That's it.
Yeah,
I can only
absolutely.
imagine what other
No.
people.
No, I'd agree with you there. That's gone. Bing.
Anyway, is Josh back? No. James, you can walk instead of Josh.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll chat here. Yeah. No, I I'm always boosting ontology in your seminars, in these talks, and so I just wanted to sort of like kind of like real, I wanted to acknowledge the people that made ontological arguments that said, what about the, you know, the the cat thing? What about the dinosaurs? What about the existence of this or that? This is the key, is that we always are dealing with existence, and the the fact that we have to deal with existence means we're focused, and especially Roland, you were so clear. Thank you, Roland. There's just something that we have to focus in on regarding the objects that in our life. These are objects that we develop attitudes and actions towards, and this is what Husserl was talking about, which was mentioned by Josh. Husserl is a really important authority because he's the person that completely revolutionized ontology by explaining that phenomenologically we have a posture towards our objectivity which determines what it is for us and how we articulate it. And this is true of scientists, this is true of philosophers, this is true of philosophers in different epochs. I was talking before about the we call them pre-Socratic philosophers before the 4th century BCE, and also the revolution that happened in Athens in the 4th century in government and war and philosophy. A number of things happened at the same time, and science as well. I'm not sure if that was in the 4th century or going back a bit to the 5th century, but Archimedes, people like that, really, really great thinkers that were able to put together basically concepts that are true and usable in modern science. So this our emphasis, right, on 20th century science and blinds us just a little bit towards the dynamism and history of the whole scientific spectrum. There was an Aristotle, there was somebody who sort of defined how physics could be talked about in a sensible way that was applicable to the science that was done in the 18th and 19th centuries. And the 18th century is the important one because that developed these ideas called the Enlightenment and the rediscovery of applying strict ideas towards doing scientific work. And so that was the revolution, and that happened because of the Enlightenment. And that wouldn't, I don't know if it wouldn't have been possible without that revolution in scientific thinking in Greece, but it certainly was similar in a lot of ways. So I think we have to, from the point of view of the history of science or the history of philosophy, we have to take that into account. And I think the part of philosophy that really sticks is you can't do epistemology without ontology. You have to be aware of what your relationship to the world is, what the relationships to objects are, and the revolution in science we call quantum mechanics that maybe some people would like to get out of because they find it puzzling. We have to, with the important message, of that, the quantum mechanics that works for science so well, is that we have to be able to accept that there are things that are observable by us, even if they are unobservable. That while that seems like a puzzle to some people, it is a fact of it is because of the fact that we are always the observer. We're always in the subjective position. We don't control the past. We don't control the whole world. We're basically in the position of reporting it, every one of us, and and without having a kind of like a positive view of the objective positions that we take, as well as the subjective positions we can achieve, through our personal metaphysics. We're kind of like denying a methodology that other people can easily agree on. So that's kind of like what I'm taking from this. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you very much.
I think you always present us with that dilemma, but today you kind of like honed in on it and said, yeah, this is because I believe this. This is my epistemology.
Yes, this time I came out with it absolutely straight instead of hinting. That's my thing. So now you know. Anyway, it was a wonderful listening to you all, and very much enjoyed it. And thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you next month. And in the meantime, be well and happy and cheerful. Bye, bye, everybody.
Bye.